Mary Shelley said Frankenstein began as a dream. But what she dreamed was not a monster coming to life. She dreamed of a creator who could not endure what he had made, a man who succeeded and then turned away. We like to tell the story as a curiosity, a teenage girl, a stormy night, a flash of imagination. But that version is comforting, because Frankenstein is not a warning about creation. It is a warning about refusal, about what happens when responsibility becomes unbearable and recognition is denied. This fixation on Shelley's age distracts from what is genuinely unsettling about Frankenstein. The novel is not impressive because it was written early. It is disturbing because it was written clearly. Frankenstein does not warn us against creating life. That is the comforting reading. It warns us about what happens after creation, when responsibility becomes unbearable, when recognition is refused, when a maker decides that what now exists does not fully count. The true horror of Frankenstein is not animation. It is abandonment. Shelley was born into ideas rather than comfort. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, argued that moral worth depends on education, care, and recognition, not divine hierarchy. Her father, William Godwin, believed human character is shaped almost entirely by environment, that neglect produces corruption more reliably than nature ever could. Wollstonecraft died shortly after Mary's birth, but her philosophy did not. Shelley grew up absorbing arguments about responsibility, moral formation, and what human beings owe one another. These ideas are not background noise in Frankenstein. They are its ethical skeleton. The novel's famous origin story, the summer of 1816 at Lake Geneva, confined indoors with Percy Bysshe Shelley, Lord Byron, and others, has hardened into legend. There were storms, ghost stories, and long conversations about galvanism, the possibility that electricity might reanimate dead tissue. It sounds like the birth of science fiction. But Shelley's anxiety was never simply about science. It was about what happens once power is achieved. Shelley herself later insisted that the novel's animating image came to her in a dream. She described emerging from a waking nightmare, having seen a pale student kneeling beside the thing he had put together, horrified by what he had made. This detail is often sentimentalized, a teenage girl's dream, as if Frankenstein sprang fully formed from unconscious fancy. But the dream matters precisely because it is not creative triumph that shocks Shelley. It is recoil. The horror is not that life begins, but that the creator turns away. Even at the level of dream logic, Frankenstein begins not with ambition fulfilled, but with responsibility refused. Victor Frankenstein does not fail because he creates life. He fails because the moment his creation looks back at him, demanding nothing more than acknowledgement, he withdraws, he runs, he abandons what now depends on him. This is the novel's central crime. Victor is often misread as a mad scientist, but Shelley is far more precise. He is educated, sensitive, idealistic, the kind of man Enlightenment thought believed should improve the world. That is what makes him dangerous. His ambition is socially rewarded. His transgression is not curiosity, but the refusal to endure the consequences of success. When creation demands patience, care, and moral stamina, Victor collapses. He cannot endure the burden of responsibility. Creation, Shelley suggests, is easy. Responsibility is intolerable. Popular culture has buried this insight beneath bolts, grunts, and stitched flesh. But Shelley's creature is neither inarticulate nor mindless. He is the most intellectually alive figure in the novel. He teaches himself language. He learns history, ethics, and emotion through books. Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, Goethe's Werther. He does not emerge violent. He emerges hopeful. His first impulses are toward kindness and restraint. He gathers firewood for a family that would beat him if they knew he existed. He watches humanity long before he demands entry into it. Shelley commits a structural provocation here. She places the creature's narrative at the novel's moral center. This is not an interruption. It is an accusation. The reader is forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. The being most frequently called a monster is the only character who consistently seeks justice. Victor, by contrast, spends the novel narrating his own suffering. He mourns constantly, but he never reflects. He calls his creation a demon, a fiend, a thing. Anything except what it is. A person with claims upon him. Shelley understood that moral evasion begins with language. If you can deny personhood, you can deny obligation. The creature does not become violent because he is unnatural. He becomes violent because he is denied recognition at every level. By his creator, by society, by the moral frameworks that decide who counts. His crimes are not excused, but they are explained. Shelley refuses the reader the comfort of condemnation without implication. This is where Frankenstein becomes dangerous. The novel asks a question we still resist. What do you owe what you have made? Not in the moment of inspiration, but afterward, when the thing is inconvenient, frightening, or disappointing. The subtitle, The Modern Prometheus Sharpens the Charge. In myth, Prometheus steals fire from the gods and is punished by divine authority. Shelley removes the gods entirely. Victor's punishment does not come from heaven. It comes through isolation, guilt, and loss. There is no fate here, only consequences. Responsibility is no longer enforced from above. It emerges from relationship. Shelley revisited the novel years later in 1831. The original 1818 edition emphasizes choice and moral responsibility. The later version leans more heavily on destiny and inevitability. Many readers prefer the earlier text, and they should. The revision reflects Shelley's grief after the deaths of her children and her husband, Percy. But it also dulls the novel's sharpest edge. Fate is easier to endure than blame. Yet even in revision, Frankenstein never relinquishes its accusation. Victor is not condemned for seeking knowledge. He is condemned for refusing care once knowledge succeeds. This is why the novel refuses to age. In every era, we repeat Victor's mistake. We build systems, technologies, institutions, intelligences, and then recoil when they demand responsibility. We debate whether something should exist long after it already does, because it is easier than asking whether we are willing to remain accountable to it. We inherit Victor's language, his disgust, his refusal. Shelley offers no redemption. There is no reconciliation. The creature disappears into the ice, unresolved, unmourned by the world that made him monstrous. Victor dies insisting on his own virtue. The novel closes not with justice, but with aftermath. And that ending matters. Frankenstein endures because it denies us moral distance. It does not allow us to say, we would never do this. It insists that we already have. Every time creation is followed by abandonment, every time responsibility is treated as optional, Victor Frankenstein lives again, insisting that intention should excuse consequence. Mary Shelley did not invent a monster. She identified one, and she left it staring back at us. Still alive, still articulate, still waiting to be acknowledged. So let me ask you this. If creation is not the crime in Frankenstein, but abandonment is, do you think Shelley ultimately condemns Victor, or does she condemn the world that lets him walk away?